My name is Getachew, and now I'm going to discuss and present you about integrity and the leadership course for a first degree program. And this course have its own description. Accordingly, this course has been designed as a useful for BA theology as well as other spiritual students. So in this course, we present us a thorough and a systematic coverage of leadership and integrity with Christian contexts. So accordingly, the first part of the course discusses about the leadership, and which have 10 chapters, and the second part of the course discusses about integrity. So totally, the course integrity and the leadership have 18 chapters. From these, the first one I have said you, 10 chapters discuss about the leadership with the Christian context, and the other one is about integrity. That means 8 chapters. Anyhow, what does it mean integrity? So according to the Bible or the Bible version, integrity is the requirement for the leadership, because all leadership is based on the trust. So if the people do not trust you, you can't lead them, which is mentioned in the Bible in Psalm or Mazamur David, chapter 78, number 72. It says, the Bible says that, so he feed or shepherd them according to the integrity of his heart, and guided them by the skillfulness of his hands. So this course is more talks about the integrity, which is guided with the skillfulness. So leadership, which needs also the skills. So accordingly, the first part included 10 chapters. So first chapter, it says about, or it talks about, discusses about God prepared Moses for leadership. The second chapter discusses about leaders should encourage participation. The third chapter, marks of a good leader. The fourth chapter discusses about Joshua's qualification to lead Israel. The sixth chapter that discusses about Jehoshaphat's advice for leaders. The chapter 7 again also, it says, show respect to leaders. How we can show the respect for the leaders. That means both spiritual as well as other leaders. The chapter 8 again also talks about or discusses about a good leaders, leaders by example, in which we try to discuss more about good leaders who lead by example. Ninth chapter, leaders must be held accountable. Leaders must be held accountable. And the last chapter for the first parts, or regarding to the leadership, is about the qualification for leaders. That is talking about qualification for the leaders, which is chapter 10. In the second part, we shall discuss about integrity. So under this topic or concept, we have 8 chapters. The first chapter is commitment to integrity. The second chapter is about commitment to integrity again also, and chapter 13 also how to keep your integrity as a leader. Chapter 14 moral code, chapter 15 core values, and chapter 16 or 1:6 about honesty. This chapter almost it's similar with the word integrity, which means also honest. And chapter 17 discusses about pride, and the last chapter of the course, as well as part 2 or about the integrity, is how do we finish well? How do we finish well? Let us start the first chapter of the part 1, or about the leadership, that talks about how God was preparing Moses for leadership. In this chapter, we try to discuss more about the way how God prepares Moses for the leadership positions, and how the God leading Moses in the wilderness areas or in the desert areas. So this is more discussed under the Holy Bible in Exodus 3:1, that means chapter 3:1. One day Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he went deep into the wilderness near Sinai. This means the mountain of God. Sinai means the mountain of God. Or again, also the other name of the Sinai is what's called as Mount Hermon. So, what a contrast between Moses' life as an Egyptian prince and his life as a Midian shepherd. Here we have the two differences. We try to discuss and separate or distinguish the contrast or the difference between the Moses' life as an Egyptian prince and his life as a Midianite. So these are the two very important issues regarding the life of Moses. So as a prince, he had everything done for him, and he was the famous son of an Egyptian princess. This is as a princess. So the Moses life is as the divided in two phases, which is in contrast. One contrasts the other. So the first life was about Moses' Egyptian prince, and the other also his life as a Midianite shepherd. So after the Egyptians, once he went out from the Egyptian's house or from the prince's lives, he went as a shepherd, the Midianite shepherds. So as a prince, he had everything done for him. He was a famous son of an Egyptian princess, once I have said. So what a contrast between Moses' life as an Egyptian prince and his life as a Midianite shepherd. So as a prince, he had everything done for him. As a prince, he had done everything. And he was the famous son of Egyptian princess. Now he was the famous son of an Egyptian princess. So God was preparing him for what? Leaderships. So how God preparing Moses for leadership positions? So what a humbling experience this must have been for Moses, but God was preparing him for a leadership. God was preparing him for a leadership. So how the God preparing Moses for a leadership? God was getting him ready to free Israel from Pharaoh grasps. So the God had its own mission in order to free the Israelites from the Pharaoh's grasps. Pharaoh means the Egyptian kings who hold Israelites, and again also the Israelite people fast or they experienced a miserable life under the Pharaoh of Egypt. So in order to free and to give the freedom for those of the Israelites, or in order to free Israel from Egyptian Pharaoh, God preparing Moses for the leadership position or qualification. So Mount Hermon is another name for Mount Sinai, where God would give the people His revealed law, which is explained or discussed under the Bible, Exodus chapter 3, number 12. So this Mount Hermon, which is another name of Mount Hermon, is what's known as Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai. Mount Hermon in the Bible is another name for Mount Sinai, the mountain where the Hebrew people entered into the covenant with the God after escaping from the bondage in Egypt. So after the escaping, or after they became free from the bondage of Egyptians, the peoples or the Israel's people, they make covenant as well as the agreement with the God, or they make covenant, or they enter into the covenant with God after escaping from the bondage in Egypt, which is more explained in Bible, Deuteronomy chapter 5, number 2, the First Kings or chapter 8, number 9. Again, also the Second Chronicles, chapter 5, number 10, and the Mount Horeb is also the place where Moses received 10 commandments and the laws, rules, and the instruction for the people before continuing on the journey. So in this mountain, Moses received 10 commandments, and the laws and the rules and the instruction to lead the people of Israel, and in order to free Israel from the bondage of Egyptians as well as from the bondage of the pharaohs. So this place is very important place, or the place where the Moses take or receive 10 commandments from the God. Again, this is further explained under Exodus chapter 33, number 6. Again, also Malachi chapter 4 and number 4. So the mountain of God is another name, is the Bible for Mount Orbe or Mount Sinai. So Mount Orbe or Mount Sinai is what's known as the mountain of God. Let us discuss, or let's say some things about the Mount Horbe. Again, you know, Horbe, the word Horbe or the term Horbe comes from the Hebrew term meaning desert. In short, Horbe comes from a Hebrew term or language which is meaning desert. Most of the events that the book of Exodus describes as happening at Mount Sinai are located at Mount Horbe in the book of Deuteronomy. So, for your further information, read in the Bible book Deuteronomy. So, under this book, we use the name Horbe explicitly for the mountains of God, except in one verse. That means chapter 33. Number 2. However, this mention of the Sinai could refer to the wilderness of Sinai rather than the mountain. So this mountain is came to be known as the mountain of God, and again also where Moses received 10 commandments. The next thing is just you can see the map of Mount Horbe. You know, Mount Horbe, which is to the northeast part of the Gulf of the Suez. Again, also it's the north of the Red Sea, and again it's also the west of the Gulf of Agawa. Again, you will see here under the map. Once I have some maps. So Mount Sinai mentioned in the Bible, which was the place where Moses went to meditate and end up receiving the 10 commandments. So Moses in this area, or in the Mount Sinai or Horbe, just receiving 10 commandments, and beyond this, again also he meditating, again also communicating and experiencing the spiritual experience with the God around the mountain, Mount Horbe. So Mount Horbe is very important in the life of Moses as well as for the Israel's people. So you can see the geographical location of Mount Horbe by this map. So how the leaders should prepare themselves for as a leadership position. So the first thing is leaders should focus on what? Obedience for more than results. More than results, the leaders should focus on what? Obediences. So by focusing on God, who must obey rather than on the results to be achieved, good leaders see beyond the temporary setbacks and rivals. So most of the time, good leaders also try to show their achievements rather than the results. So they focus on obediences. They focus on the rules and the regulation, as well as keeping or respecting the law, as well as which is part of obedience for God. So which is more explained under Bible, Exodus chapter 6, number 9 up to 12. So Moses told the people that the Lord had said, but they would not listen anymore. They had become too discouraged by increasing burden of their slavers. So then the Lord said to Moses, go back to Pharaoh and tell him to let the people of Israel leave Egypt. This is the command which is given from the God for Moses. So this is what's known as the first the God commands towards Moses. So God says, go back to Pharaoh and tell him to let the people of Israel leave Egypt. That means the first mission as well as the first aim of the God preparing Moses for the leadership position is in order to free or Israel people from the hand of or the bondage of what the Pharaoh or from the Egyptian kings. But Lord, Moses objected. My own people won't listen to me anymore. This is the complaint as well as the objection of the Moses. But the God preparing Moses for as a leading person to free Egyptian Israel's people from the hand of Egypt. So the Hebrews did not want to hear anymore about God and his promises, because the last time they listened to Moses, all they got was more work and greater sufferings. Sometimes a clear message from God is followed by a period when no change in the situation is apparent. The God, again also, sometimes giving his own message to those of the peoples, especially for Moses. During that time, seeming setbacks may turn people away from wanting to hear more about God. This is the objections. Because of this, Moses, how I can tell or told my peoples. So people also even rejecting or unable to want to hear the message from the God. If you are a leader, don't give up. That means don't stop. Keep bringing the people God's message as a Moses. So as a spiritual leader, we should obey the sound of the voice of the God in order to deliver what the voice of the God says for us. So we have obedience as well as responsibility and duties to deliver or bring the message of the gods to the people. So Moses once asked, or once he have the responsibility to deliver the message towards the people. Moses obeyed God. Moses obeyed the God, or he respects God, and so he wants to try or load to deliver the message of the God. What a difference is it made when the chance for the success appear him. Remember that anyone can obey God when the task is easy, and everyone is behind it. Only those who is persistent based on obey when the task is impossible. The next thing is a spiritual leader should be encouraged. Spiritual leaders should be encouraged. This is another qualification, as well as the leaders should be encouraged. The first thing is the spiritual leaders should be encouraged. That means, spiritual leaders, once which is stated under Ephesians, we have 5 offices: pastors, apostles, again also prophets, teachers, and evangelists. They should be encouraged. That means this time, or in modern times, or again also practically, those of the spiritual leaders means apostles, teachers, preachers, again also prophets, and any bishop is again also archbishop is again all those of people who are serving the God in the church should be encouraged, which is highly stated under Exodus 17:10 up to 16. So Joshua did what Moses had commanded. So Joshua, one of our best example. So Joshua did what Moses had commanded. He led his men out of the fight, the army of Amalek. So once Joshua did these things. Meanwhile, Moses, Aaron, and Aaron went to the top of a nearby hill. As long as Moses held up the staff with his hands, the Israelites had the advantage. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites gained the upper hand. Moses' armies finally became too tired to hold up the staff any longer. So Aaron and Hur found a stone for him to sit on. This is Parzal explained. So Aaron and Hur stood by Moses' side and held up his arms to ensure victory against Amalek. So this Aaron, again also, in addition to that of Joshua, Aaron and Hur stood by Moses' side, and they held up his arms to ensure victory against Amalek. This is what's going on as spiritual leaders should be encouraged. So Aaron and Hur encouraged Moses. Joshua again also encouraged Moses. And again also they are shouldering and the encouraging and the Parzar they give support as well as offering a prayer are ways of refreshing spiritual leaders in their work. So how we can refreshing our spiritual leader? One way is prayers, and again also other is also giving a support in different ways, which should be as encouragement, or spiritual leader should be encouraged. So this is I think the end of the first chapter, and the next chapter is chapter 2 about leaders should encourage participation. The first thing is, spiritual leaders should be encouraged. And again also, leaders should encourage participation. Again also, leaders should follow participatory approaches. The spiritual leaders again also should follow participatory approaches. So this chapter is more talking about participatory approach, or about the participation issues. So how the leaders should encourage participation of the other peoples or the other leaders. So, which is clearly stated under the Bible, Exodus chapter 29, number 42. This is to be daily burnt offering given from the generation to generation. That means when the participation is encouraged, again also the leadership transparency as well as transformation, which is from generation to generation, which is very important command which is given for the Christians under the Bible, Exodus chapter 29 and number 42. The next thing is God's action in bringing Israelites out of Egypt showed his great desire to be with them and protect them. So, and this, that means in order to free Israelites from Egyptians or from the Pharaoh, the God also with Moses, again also with Joshua and the other peoples. So this is what's known as participation. So leaders should encourage participation. How leaders should encourage participation? So the first thing was about a leader should follow up what? On assigned works. The first thing, leaders should follow up what? On assigned works, which is clearly stated under the Bible, Exodus chapter 39, verse 3, where Moses inspected all their work and blessed them because it had been done as the Lord had commanded him. So Moses acted and he done as what the God also commanded him, and again also he acted according to the instruction and the rules as well as the law of God. The next thing is leaders should follow up on what? Assigned works. So preparing what? Transition in leaderships. So preparation is very important in the case of transition in leaderships, which is clearly stated under Numbers chapter 27, number 15 up to 21. That means ዘውልቁ ምዕራፍ 27 ከ15 ከ21 እንደተጠቀሰው ማለት ነው። So then Moses said to the Lord, O Lord, the God of spirits of all living things, please appoint a new leader for the community. Give them someone who will lead them into battle. So the people of the Lord will not be like a sheep without the shepherd. So the people of the Lord will not be like a sheep without a shepherd. So as a shepherd is very a good example for the leader. So preparing for transition in leadership is also another way of encouraging participation in the leadership. The other part is about many people want to know as a leader, but the best leader are both what? Goal-oriented and people-oriented. So the major quality as well as good quality of the best leaders are both goal-oriented and people-oriented. So these are very important quality as well as preparing transition in the leadership way or practice. So the best leaders should be both goal-oriented and people-oriented. The first thing is about the goal, the other is about what? People-oriented. Because as a leader, we try to lead those of the peoples. So Moses did not want to leave this work without making sure a new leader was ready to replace him. How? how this is happened. So first he asked God to help him find a replacement. So Moses not done by his own willings, but Moses asked the will of the God. The first he asked the God to help him find replacements. That means the next leaders who can replace Moses to lead or to free the Israel's people from the bondage of the Egyptians. Then when Joshua was selected, Moses gave him a variety of tasks to ease the transition into his new position. Moses again also gave him a variety of tasks, and again also Moses was working a lot to transfer the leadership power into Joshua. Moses also clearly told the people that Joshua had the authority and the ability to lead the nations. So Moses again also he implementing his responsibility, as well as he was his command which is given from the God. And again also Moses oriented the people or the Israelites that Joshua had the authority and the ability to lead the nation. So which shows the transition of the leadership power from Moses to Joshua. So Joshua was the next leader after Moses. So his display of confidence in Joshua was good for both Joshua and the people. Why this is happened? Because in order to minimize the leadership gaps, anyone in the leadership position should train others to cry on the people should, or she suddenly have to leave. While you have the opportunity, follow Moses' pattern as a church leader or as a spiritual leader, or when you have such kind of opportunity, just you have to follow the Moses pattern. The first one is pray. Moses is the first step, as well as his first pattern or structure in leadership position is praying. And the second one, quality, or as well as the second way of Moses transferring or is preferring for transition in leadership is through by what? Selection, or just he selects as he selected Joshua. The third step was development. Then the final was commission. Just he giving a lot of tasks, and just he is guiding and he following. And again also just he orienting, and again also just he making a communication with those other people, because Joshua has good persons to take or overtake the leadership position, as well as the authority to lead the people of Israel. So Moses' pattern is very important, or when we get the opportunity to lead as spiritual leaders. So this pattern is very important. The first thing is pray, other is select, develop, and commission. Okay, and I think for read further more about the chapter 2. This is the end of the chapter 2. The next chapter is chapter 3. In chapter 3, we try to discuss about marks of a good leaders. Marks of a good leaders. How we can identify marks of a good leader. How we can identify good leaders. Good leaders was identified by what ways? So the first marks of a good leader is about what? The best leader as both goal-oriented and people-oriented. This is the first mark of what? A good leader. As a good leader, you should be goal-oriented and what? People-oriented. This is the first marks of what? Good leader. Good leader should be goal-oriented and people-oriented, because leaders leading, or they have responsibility to lead the people. So this way, the leaders should have a goal, and again also they should focus on the people or on their followers. So this is clearly stated under the Bible, Deuteronomy chapter 13, number 1 up to 3. So I read it from your Bible, this verse. The other marks of a good leader is God is not against new ideas. God, Lord, not against a new ideas, but He is for what? Discriminant. When you hear a new attractive ideas, examine it carefully before getting too excited. False prophets are still around today. The wise person will carefully test ideas against the truth of the God or the God's word. This wise as well as the wisdom is very important. Because of due to this, Solomon asked first God about what the wisdom. So wisdom is very important. So God not against new ideas, but wisdom as well as the wiseness is very important as a good leader. This is the marks of what? A good leader. So don't try to lead the law. This is another marks. So Moses made a wise decision. So this is making a wise decision also another marks of what? A good leader. A good leaders must make a wise decision to share the leadership with what? Others. When sharing a decision with others, a good leader should be wise in his or her decision. Marks of a good leader, another marks of a good leader is the inner qualities of a good leader. The inner qualities of the good leader, which is stated in Deuteronomy chapter 1, number 13 up to 18. So where Moses identifies some of the inner qualities of good leaders, such as wisdom. The first inner quality of the leader is wisdom. The other is also understanding. The third inner quality of good leader is what? Respect. Wisdom, which is one of the way we use the knowledge as well as the skills, which is the pursuit of the knowledge, or just depending on the skill. So the first inner qualities of good leader is what? Wisdom. The second inner qualities of good leader is about what? Understanding others or the followers, because the one is what? Goal oriented and what? People oriented. Since we are people oriented, we should understand and the other peoples. The next one is respect. Giving respect is also very important as spiritual leaders. So these characteristics differ markedly from one of the often held elect leaders today. Good looks, wealth, popularity, willingness to do anything to get to the top. The qualities of Moses identified should be evident in us we lead, and again we should look for them in those we elect to position of the leadership. So the inner qualities of the leaders are very important, such as wisdom, understanding, and respect. This is again a very short chapter, chapter 3, and then the next chapter is about chapter 4, which is discussing about Joshua qualification to lead Israel. What kind of qualification Joshua have to lead the people of Israel? So chapter 4 talking about the qualification of what? Joshua to lead Israel. So which is stated under the book of Joshua, chapter 1, number 1 up to 5, where Joshua, the successor of Moses, Joshua succeeded Moses as Israel leader. What qualification did he have to become the leader of a nation? So the first qualification, as well as the first quality of Joshua, means Joshua appointed God appointed Joshua, the first one, which is stated under number chapter 27, number 18 up to 23. The second qualification is he was one of the only two living eyewitness to the Egyptian plagues and the exodus from Egypt. This is another quality of qualification of Joshua. The third qualification Joshua, he was personal aid for what? 40 years. He got personal aid for the last 40 years. This is another qualification. The fourth qualification of Joshua to lead Israel people of 12 spices, only he and the Caleb showed complete confidence that God would help them conquer the land. Now, there are 12 peoples. They sent to spy the land of Canaan, as well as thus people, but the rest of the 10 peoples are not accomplishing their mission. But Caleb and Joshua accomplished their mission. Then they helped to conquer the land, that means Canaan, where wealth and richness also there for the people of Israel. And again also it is a promised land for the Israel's people. So this promised land once conquered with the assistance as well as the confidence of Joshua. This is another qualification of Joshua. God is our real leader. So God is our real leader. God is our leader. He can lead, and again also He can show our way. Judges chapter 1, number 1 now. After the days of Joshua, it came to pass, the children of Israel asked the Lord, saying, who shall go up for us against the Canaanites first, to fight against them? So God is our what? Real leader. So the people of Israel had finally entered and taken the control of the land promised to their ancestors, ones which is stated under Genesis chapter 12, number 7, again of Exodus 3, chapter number 16 to 17. So this all about shows that God is our real leaders. So read very carefully, and again read more about the real leader of the God from the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, and again also from the Judge. Joshua had been obvious successor to what? Moses, but there was no obvious successor to Joshua. Joshua became obvious successor of Moses, but Joshua had no obvious successor. During this crisis of leadership, Israel had to learn that no matter how powerful and wise the current leader was, so their real leader was God. After Joshua, the Israelites faced what? The absence of what? The successors. But our God is what? A real leader. So the Israelites' real leader was what? God. Even when we are trying, the God of Israel, the God of Caleb, the God of Israel. So in this way, our God is real leaders. I think this is the end of chapter 4. And again, Joshua's qualification is very important to lead Israel, but Israel is again also they meet with the crisis, with the absence of what the successors, but the God helps the Israeli peoples. Through the God's strength, Israelites had conquered many enemies and overcome many difficulties, but their work was not yet finished. So the God leading the Israelites, and then they succeeded to accomplish their intended promise, or they captured or conquered promised land. That is what's known as Canaan. So this is the end of chapter 4, and read more from from your Bible verse, especially Genesis, Numbers chapter 12, number 7, Exodus chapter 3, number 16 to 17, which is about real leadership position of what? God. So God is our real leader. And thank you very much for your further information. Read from the Bible. And in the next section, we will discuss about the next chapter, which is chapter 5 from the first part, or part 1, which is talking about the leadership. Still now we are discussing about the leaders. In the coming period, we try to discuss about chapter 5.